Hi, everyone, and welcome to From the Ground Up. I'm your host today, Carol Wyman from Outdoor Coffee Shop, and I am joined today by Steve Barnes from AquaStar, and he is going to break down the pool pump equipment pad and show contractors how smart decisions can save money, save energy, cut costs, and impress our clients. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure. I'm glad to be here. I hope I can
Yeah.
help.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure you can. Um, will you introduce yourself to all the people that are just meeting you for the first time and tell us a little bit about AquaStar?
Sure. My name is Steve Barnes, and I am the Director of Science and Compliance for AquaStar Pool Products. AquaStar is a manufacturer of virtually everything on the pad, but really we're based here in Ventura, California, started in 2003, one owner, vertically integrated. We started out in 2003 with one drain cover, and that has expanded into 40 or 50 now. And so that's sort of the core of the AquaStar business on what the drain covers and fittings and skimmers, the stuff that goes into swimming pools that's not the pad, that moves water in and out. And then 10 years later, started looking at things like chlorinators and valves and things on the pad. And now we do everything, basically pumps, filters, valves. What we don't do is heaters. We're in California, so good luck with that. But no, that's sort of out of our realm. When I say vertically integrated, we do the ideas, the designs, the CAD drawings, so what the parts look like that you take out of a package. But more importantly, we actually design the tools that make those parts, the foundry, the manufacturing side. So if you picture a valve or a drain cover, simple flat, a drain cover, that is made inside a hunk of steel that's size of a desk. And the hot plastic is squirted in and out pops a drain cover. Well, for pumps, every piece of equipment that you see on the pad, that process happens. We make those tools. So we design them, we make them, then we actually move them to another building and run them. So we make those plastic parts, then we assemble them, we ship it, we market them, we do this kind of stuff. So by vertical integration, AquaStar, this little company in Ventura, California, kind of does it all. And I think it's fun to be a part of.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I know we've talked before, and I know safety is at the forefront of everything and really, kind of revolutionized how people look at this so that it's, everything is, safety based for everything that you do. So can you walk us through what an equipment pad is?
Sure. So let's start with the word pad. It's the ground that equipment sits on. Typically, it's concrete, but it can be other things. It can be pavers, and some systems it might be a plastic pad or something. But the key is the equipment has to sit on solid something that's waterproof because we water all over it when we open pumps and we it needs to be on a solid footing. So collectively, that is what we call the pad. What the pad is in context of this conversation is all the stuff on it: the pump, the filter, heaters, valves, accessories, the control panels, basically everything behind that wall or beside that house in that room. We refer to collectively as the equipment pad, and how those things interact with each other has a massive impact.
Wow. Yes, I mean, everything's right there. So how does understanding where it is efficient and where it is not impact costs, time on the job, and client satisfaction for the contractor?
So I think maybe the best way to answer that question is, let's look down on the pad conceptually and talk about kind of three major elements of the pad. Each one contributes massively in its own light, and then collectively they really impact everything from water quality, safety, energy efficiency. So let's start really what the heart of is at the equipment pad and the whole reason it exists, and that's the pool pump. So the pool pump is what moves water from the pool through a filter back to the pool. It's really the whole point, and that's what makes swimming pools and not a pond. So we've had, Roman baths and things like that, but that's where water comes in and leaves. It's never filtered or anything. So the modern filter pool stuff started in like 1905 to 1926 in the modern age with electricity and pumps. So the whole reason we have a pad is we have a pump that moves water, pushes it through a filter, and then obviously to get it back to the pool, it's going to go through valves to do different things. On the suction side of the pump, you have skimmers, which is the most important thing in the pool for water quality. Then we have drains as another way to get water to the pump. As a drain cover manufacturer, people often find that kind of odd, that what's most important to me is the skimmer, and that's where the leaves and the bugs and sweat and lotions, we need to get that out of the pool so it doesn't sink and doesn't make yucky water. So the pump moves the water through the filter. So let me talk about the filter. Its job is to take the yuck out of the pool. So the filter itself, they can be sand, cartridge, diatomaceous earth, and then there's some hybrid new ceramic stuff coming out. So the filters in the last 15, 20 years are not the filters of 20 years ago. Even though they may be the same sand, now we have specialty glass, and there's things we do where the sand and these other elements do a better job of collecting the stuff in the water. And then even cartridge has been around a long time. It's in RO systems. It's all over the place. But the cloth, or how that cartridge is made, radically changes. Does it clean water, or is it just a screen door on a submarine? Not it. Yeah, it's a door. It's a screen. It filters out fish, but your boat's sinking. And so what that screen door material is makes a massive difference. And then on the DE side, which is basically coral, that's not technically correct, but it's a screen door that we put the diatomaceous earth on, and it super filters. It doesn't. I think it's the best job at making bottled water quality. And so every one of these, sand passes more stuff. You can see it in the night at Floaty. The old school commodity cartridge filters pass stuff to the pool, but do a little better than sand. Modern cartridge with pinpoint bonding and things like that are easy to clean. Those do almost as good as DE. And then DE does the best job. And then there's alternatives to that, perlite and some things. So there's a lot, and I spent a lot of time on the filter because that really makes or breaks the water quality. And there's elements to the filter, how well they filter, can you clean them, and then also their hydraulic efficiency that's never been really talked about in the pool industry. AquaStar is with our pipeline filter, because it at 150 gallons a minute only has 2 psi back pressure, and the great big ones have 11. Well, that means that a brand new filter is putting a lot of back pressure on the pump and driving up the electric bill. So that's why that's important. The final element on the pad, there's the heater, but that's kind of, those are set. They have a purpose, and I'm from the desert, so what do I know about heaters? But no, they're important. But really, for context of this, let's keep them aside, because they're all pretty universal. They have their own benefits and all that. They heat water in their different qualities, so they're very important. But everything that connects all of this is really where one of the biggest unlocks of understanding a pad. It's the size of the pipe, the kind of elbows, how efficient was the pad laid out. Is the pump on this side, and then it goes across to the filter on the other side, then comes back across to the heater on this side, and then crisscrosses to the chlorinator, and then to the valves, and you walk up and it's just this spaghetti mess, right? Well, that might have been easy to install because I did Lincoln Logs one at a time. Ooh, I just showed my age. What's a
Never heard of
modern
Lincoln
tool?
Logs, right? Okay, I
Anyway,
have.
okay. So our toys were wooden when I was a kid. Plastics happened later. I'm old. But how that sort of just figure it out, do it yourself approach, where I got a pipe out of the ground. Okay, I'm going to put a pump here, and then I need a filter. Oh, I set it down over there. So there's no planning involved in those by and large. And the reason I point that out is I think everyone's seen these things, and then you have the modern builders and quality installers that it's all methodically laid out and it looks pretty and it's understandable. Not only does that reflect on the pool pro and the installer, the work, you can look at it and say, yuck, or wow, that's impressive. I can understand this, and I don't know anything about a pad. Not only is that perceived value so important to the pool builder contractor, is the difference between that spaghetti mess and just repipe it with the exact same piping can be a 90% savings. So we've done a lot of case studies. We're not alone. Other companies have done this over the decades, where you take out that spaghetti mess and just replace it with the same 2-inch pipe, same pump, even the same filter, but just cleaning up that mess can save 60 to 70% off the electric bill. On the one that you add a pipeline pump and a pipeline filter, which are super energy efficient, top tier kind of a thing, that's where we're getting to the 90%. And in California Pool, we actually have documented and done presentations on and publicized. It went from $109 a month at 42 gallons. I'm going to geek out here. At 52 gallons a minute. Okay. And it was a beautiful pool. It was always clean and all that, but it cost I think it was $1 or $105 a month here in California. We replaced the equipment, repiped it, laid it out, put pump, filter, heater, put everything in the right order, still the same size pipe, and that electric bill went down to $9 a month, still moving 52 gallons a minute. So
Wow.
apples to apples. So the homeowner got a new pad that was safe, efficient, quiet, easy to understand, easy to maintain, and their water didn't change at all because they had a DE filter and went to the pipeline filter. It has DE-like performance. And so the point of that, and really why it's important to understand that, is we as contractors in the pool industry have a massive opportunity. We have millions of pools out there with old equipment, and when the pump dies, we have to replace it, and it can't be the old single speed, so now we get into variable speed. It's just a giant opportunity. And when you go in and document what it was at $100 a month, and there's a process for that. It's not difficult. It's technical, but not difficult. And then you put in the new one and demonstrate that they're at $9 a month. Now that upgrade pays for that work, pays the profits. That's why we're here. And also pays the credit card bill, and still leaves money in the bank at the end of the month for these homeowners. That's the giant unlock that I hope contractors viewing and people will understand from this.
Yeah, I think I mean, just showing the efficiency and over time, just the advancements that have come from what you're offering, I think really it's a win-win for everybody. You had mentioned a little bit about pumps, and you may have answered part of this, but how does the way water moves through the pad affect pump performance and energy use and the overall experience?
So alluded to, if there's a lot of spaghetti, right, it creates a lot of back pressure on the pump. But let me actually go back out to the swimming pool.
Okay.
And I mentioned skimmers right up front. You really want water leaving the surface of the pool, and that needs to go to the pump. Well, one misconception that I started in the industry in 1984, and I did not realize the physics of moving water until the mid 2000s. Learned from a NASA scientist, literally, who laughed at me. And so pumps don't suck. Well, some do, but pumps don't suck. Atmosphere pushes. Okay, so let me talk. It's kind of technical, but follow along. So you turn on the pump. An impeller inside of it spins. They're centrifugal pumps. That spinning water flings water. You need to think of water as molecules, like marbles or sand. Okay, that's why you can have misters and all that. So water is a molecule, it's separate. It's not a chain linked together that you can grab a molecule of water in the pump and drag it from the skimmer to the pump. It doesn't work that way. So what happens is when the pump turns on, it pushes water out and into the filter. Now there's less marbles in the pump pot. The atmospheric pressure, so now we have what we call low pressure or suction, okay? That's water pressure less than atmospheric pressure. So the atmospheric pressure pushing down, gravity on the pool surface pushes the water to the pump. Why is this important? If your skimmer baskets are jammed up and plugged and your drain covers are covered with leaves, that pump is screaming because the atmosphere can't push through that stuff to get it to the pump. So that's the noise that causes cavitation, that reduces flow. So now we don't have as much water going through the filter. That cascades into a green pool. Okay, so we know, we got to clean this stuff, right? Okay, well, going into the engineering side of it is the size of the pipe going from the pool to the pump makes a big difference. If you have old 1.25-inch pipe like we used in the 70s and early 80s, you just can't get enough water through it, so the pump's always struggling and starving. And you can put a brand new variable speed, high efficiency pump on it, and it doesn't change that. So conceptually, for all of it, suction is if you think about sucking water out of a straw, okay, out of a soda, okay, they're big and you drink it quickly. Now use a stir stick from a bar. For those old enough to go there, little tiny thing. Yeah, you can get that drink's going to last a long time, okay? Because you can't. Well, you're creating the suction with your mouth. That's what a pump is doing. Okay, so that's sort of fundamental. Another element so basically we have two pumps. We have the pump, and then we have atmosphere. So the pump we could turn on and off. Atmosphere you can't. So gravity, drainage, and all that. So it's important to understand that. Once you understand that, now the elevation of the pump, it can only be so high, small pipe. There's a lot more that gets into hydraulics that is beyond what we need here. But it's important to understand that is the single most least understood part of why a brand new pump still isn't working. The classic case is spa jets that don't work, and the homeowner's like, this has never worked well. I got a 1.5-horse pump and 1.5-inch pipe, and a contractor comes in and I'll sell you a 3-horsepower pump. Woof woof. and then going back to that pad replacement, we actually went from a single speed pump to a variable speed pump, and the flow rate with the 3-horsepower variable speed pump running on high speed went from that 52 gallons a minute to 56. Doubled the electric bill. So what happened? Well, the horsepower can't draw any more water out of the pool because of the small pipe that exists. So that is the choke point. It's not the spa jets that were the problem, is the system wasn't big enough to handle the high volume of flow those spa jets are designed for. Once you go on the other side of the pump, dirty filter, small pipe, long runs, all that. So back pressure, if you think about a pressure washer with a 5-horsepower car washer or patio washer, you got a bigger pump than we put on our pools, but it doesn't move a lot of water because of small pipe and a lot of back pressure. So that's sort of how it works on that side of the pump. And then the modern variable speed pumps, we also we went from, it reminds me of the mini bike neighbor had. It was a lawnmower mower that we put on a mini bike, and you just started it and it went. It was direct drive to the chain, and then it stopped when you wrecked. That was old single speed pumps. There was no choice. There was no throttle. It was just on or off. And when we go to variable speed pumps, we have the equivalent of cruise control in a car. And there it's smart enough that when you go uphill, It uses more gas to keep you doing 55 miles an hour. And when you go downhill, it slows down. Variable speeds have that capability, but they're not programmed properly. So now we put a variable speed pump that statistically should save 60, 70%, and the electric bill goes up. Why did that happen? Because they treat that new, more powerful variable speed pump like the old single speed it replaced. And now you have unhappy customers. The other thing is that new pump is more powerful, so it'll often have more, it'll have much more flow than the filter is designed or capable of handling, because it was installed matched with a smaller pump. So when we install variable speed pumps, because we don't have a choice, all of a sudden we create a whole nother problem. So not only does a month later the electric bill goes up because we're running a bigger pump at high speed, now it's torn up the grids or whatever in the filter, or it's too fast for the old sand filter, so it starts blowing the debris back to the pool. So we have a brand new pump, electric bill goes up, and my pool turns green. Yay, I love the pool industry. And so that's another circling back to what hopefully coming out of this is, not only is this an opportunity to increase and, make customers happy and improve efficiency and all of that, is if you don't look at these details, you can't create a problem you don't even know you've left behind.
Yeah, it comes from educating the contractors and understanding that it all has to work together. You have to look at all the different parts of the pad to be able to make sure that you're making good decisions and setting it up for success, really. So that's really interesting. I know that someone had mentioned that plumbing choices can significantly influence system efficiency. So how can contractors use this knowledge to improve performance and provide better results for the clients?
I think where piping comes in, this goes back in something I said flippantly at a trade show, is was standing at the international show in Las Vegas. And it occurred to me, of all of the equipment that we see, the most expensive thing pool owners end up buying is small pipe. Cheap to buy, expensive to own. So go back to that the small straw kind of a thing, the pump, trying to run it, the whole spa jets. If you don't if you don't put the piping big enough to do the job, that system can never work right. It just can't. And so that said, the piping that we have learned is, so we have existing pools where we do these pad upgrades, and it's got small 1.5 or 2-inch pipe running 25, 30 feet from the pool to the spa. You don't have to replace that to get 70% energy savings. Okay. And why that's true is, well, but first it's important to understand is when you do from the pad up replacement, you need to obviously go to the minimum for that pump sizing. There's pool codes of 6 feet per second, 8 feet per second. So the higher the flow rate, the bigger the pipe. So that's sort of the foundation. If you go one pipe size bigger than pool code would require, so go from 2-inch to 2.5, that you can gain just at the equipment pad an extra 20% in energy savings, again at the same flow rate. So it costs a significant amount more to go from 2 to 2.5-inch pad on. I mean, we know it, we've done it, but the payback will come over time. The other thing is now the water's moving slower through the pipe in the equipment, and if you keep it programmed at that 52 gallons a minute that the pool was already clean on, now it gets really quiet. And that's a perceived value that we hear over and over again. One of the focuses of the pipeline pump is a rubber motor mount so that you're not getting vibration. The convenient to install pumps with adjustable feet and plastic, and you can change stuff. That's really great for a morning's work. And then we listen to it for the life of the pool. So our philosophy at AquaStar is we really want the pool owner experience to be amazing, and it takes a little longer. Going from 2 inch to 2.5 takes a little longer at the pool pad, but the payoff is immense. So that's hugely important. And one thing on the pool pipe is, and the spaghetti thing I talked about before, understand every time someone adds another elbow, conceptually think about moving the equipment pad. It's like 7.5 feet for a 2-inch elbow or something like that. But I'm going to use a big number that's easier. Every elbow you add to a pool moves the equipment 10 feet further from the pool. So instead of coming out of the ground, into the pump, up, over, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 back to the ground, 6, call that 60 feet of head. That minimum. And then now you see this pool that's got 15, 20, 30 of these things. Conceptually, every elbow, think about at a minimum, the equipment's 5 feet further away. So if you have 10 elbows that you don't need, which is not uncommon, you've moved the pump 60 feet from the pool.
Wow.
So by just using the same size pipe and cleaning up the pad and making it look pretty and safer, because you can get away from the filter and all of that, and you can clean it and accessible and all of that, you're absolutely saving energy if you program the pump to take advantage of it. So if you just still run it on high speed, you're sort of right back where you started.
Right. It's educating the contractors, and that's what you're doing. And I'm sure you have great people that can kind of walk people through, walk the contractors through it. But and everything you're saying makes a great deal of sense. It's, obviously years of experience for AquaStar. So you've answered this, but I don't know if you want to expand on this. How does a well-designed equipment pad make up the pool system easier for homeowners to maintain, keep water cleaner, and reflect positively on the contractor's work? You've expanded on that. I don't know if you want to sum that up a little bit.
Well, I'm actually going to take it a little different direction.
Okay.
So once you've achieved all of these efficiencies, so instead of running, I'll go back to that analogy, we went 52 gallons a minute with a single speed pump. We replaced the pad and we were able to run at 52 gallons a minute for 90% less. Well, how that is achieved is the point here, is once we make it easy for the water to move through the system, right? Because it's now 60 feet closer to the pool, theoretically, high efficiency filter, hydraulic, and all of that. Well, and you program the pump, what you do is you run it much slower at the same flow rate. So now you're not hearing the spinning pump. It's not vibrating. It's quieter, but we're moving the same amount of water for $10 a month instead of $90. Now what you want to do is run that pump longer. And now the significance of this, I'm going to go back to where we started. My favorite device, the skimmer, is if you keep the skimmer running and just enough water to go over the skimmer weir, then when the stuff lands in the pool, which happens 24/7, everything floats. Even in the desert where I'm from, the haboobs and the gray, that stuff will sit on top of the water for about 15, 20 minutes. And so it's really important in the desert to run our pumps when the storms are coming through in the afternoon. Otherwise, the stuff sinks. So really, other than the bratty kid next door throwing rocks that sink, almost everything else is going to float. And so if we keep the pump running at low speed, we take that stuff off the surface of the pool. It gets captured in the skimmer if it's bugs and whatnot. The sand and silt stuff goes and gets captured in the filter. And now it's not in the pool, so the water's clear. That's sort of the obvious of the pad. But equally important on the financial side is it's reducing chlorine and chemical demand. So now you're using less sanitizer to keep the same parts per million, just like we're using a much lower pump speed to keep the 52 gallons a minute. So there's really, the pad is a critical part of it, but water quality, joy of ownership, safety, and all of that is a three-legged stool. It's the pump to move the water, it's the filter to clean the water, and it's the in-pool circulation to send that sanitizer everywhere around the pool surface so we don't get algae, we don't get dirty spots because it's off for 16 hours. So when you combine all of this together and run these pumps, if it was my pool, it'd be running 24/7 on 600. Well, it would be running 24/7. At times, it's going to run higher. So cleaner cycles, chlorine cycles, if it's an electric, certainly heaters we need, and when you're using it and having fun. But the baseline is that pool needs, it's there day in and day out, and it has nowhere to go. So what we want to do is spread that filter cycle. We want to turn over that pool on average at least two times a day. Instead of doing that in 6 hours or 8 hours, do it in 24 hours. And then that saves massive amounts of money. This 90% savings is based on the pump affinity law. And that says 1/2 speed, 1/2 the flow rate. 1/4 speed, 1/4 the flow rate. So the pump is 1-to-1 on flow. And that's an unlock in and of itself. The other is pressure drops to, when you go half speed, the pressure drops from 10 psi on the filter to 2.5. This is physics, pump affinity law, Google it. And then the third element, and this is the giant unlock and why we have variable speed pump federal law, is 1/2 speed, 1/2 flow, 1/8 the power. So by having this efficient system that's been replumbed, we moved it 60 feet closer by getting rid of all the elbows, we put in a high efficiency pipeline filter. Then now what we do is we're running at, instead of 3,000 RPM to move 52 gallons a minute, we're only at 800. And now that speed, I can't do that math in real time, but you go from 2,000 watts to 200.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, so we can run that pump 24 hours a day for half the price of running that same pump on high speed for 8 hours a day. That's the giant unlock that does the water's clear because we're skimming. The water's clear because we have a good filtration system. The water's clear because the chemicals are able to do the job in the pool instead of just trying to treat the stuff that sank.
Wow, that really maximizes the efficiency. When you think of that game plan, that's really, really good to know. And I'm sure that the people listening are very appreciative of that. So I'm going to move forward with asking you, what are some most common mistakes contractors see on equipment pads?
I'm going to say the biggest thing for sure, since variable speed, is not programming the variable speed pumps for the pool. You just can't, if the single speed, you didn't have a choice. They run at 3450 or whatever the case, 3400, whatever the case may be for the specific model. And then they install a variable speed and just run it on high speed for the same. You've gained nothing. What a service pro can do coming onto a pool that has a variable speed and it's being run like a single speed pump is to do kind of what I said, is I encourage at a generic level that works, is you want it to start up whenever you're going to do it. And you do need to be aware of when electric rates are higher, and it's very much regional, so it matters. So you do sort of need to coordinate around that. Make sure you're aware of that, coordinate with the pool owner. But let's say they say, okay, I trust you, and you know that it's okay to run whenever, is when the pump starts up, and they don't want to do 24 hours a day, when the pump starts up, you really want to run it for an hour, at least hour and a half, 2 hours at a high speed, not crazy high, but at a high speed. And what you want to do is stir it up stir up the whole pool, get everything moving because it's trying to be a pond overnight. So now we need to get it moving again, okay? And then once it's stirred up and you've skimmed it or it's gone through a cleaning cycle, now slow it down just to where there's enough water going over the skimmer weir to keep it operational. This is when it would have been off conceptually. So we're going from off where no chlorinators working, no heaters working. So that stuff still may not work, but it wouldn't have anyway. But run enough to keep water flowing over that skimmer and run it for 4 or 5 hours. And then maybe you need to bump it to get the chlorinator to work and then slow it down. So the idea is spread out that same energy usage, take advantage of the pump affinity law to go faster, slow it down, faster, slow it down. Because when you're just in that skimming mode, there's not going to be a lot of circulation. You're really focused on the skimming and filtering that out during this turn it over phase. Then we do need to run the pump higher for the equivalent of 6 hours a day to stir up and move the water around the pool surface so that we send chlorine to attack the algae that is trying to grow all the time. So that's why spread out the high speed and run the skimmer low will really be a giant unlock for any existing pool, regardless of if it's spaghetti or not. If it's got a variable speed pump, you can probably get, I would say, easily 30-40% energy savings without these upgrades just by programming that pump that's sitting there.
Wow, that's incredible. So I would like to ask, so the AquaStar pumps are US made with no tariffs or investor-driven price increases. So why is this important for contractors focused on controlling project costs and protecting profit margins?
So I'm not in the money side of this, but I think I know there hasn't been a price increase in the last couple of years, and it's kind of fun to see the list that comes out of all the significant players. Just people I've admired for 40 years, and AquaStar's name's not on the list because we have a 0 next to price increases. And really, I mentioned it. I mentioned early on that we're vertically integrated. So because we're making the stuff here in Ventura, we're not paying the whole goods import kinds of stuff. There's things that nobody makes in the U.S. anymore, stainless steel screws and stuff. So we're not 100% immune from tariffs in stuff that just is not made in the U.S. But it's such this little itty bitty tiny part of what we're doing. That's why we're not facing the tariffs. It also, we're a small team working really hard, long hours, to build a solid organization. And so with the pipeline pump, when we launched that 3 years ago or whatever, we had one pump state. We test 100% of what leaves our factory. It goes through a formal test. So wet tests and all of that. So we make sure it's right from a quality and all of that kind of point of view. And that's one test stand. Then it became 2. Now I see 6, the equipment for 5 or 6 of them. So because we're vertically integrated, we start small, stay lean, but build out so that we can keep up with demand. We're not getting ahead. We're not borrowing. Again, I'm not financial, so I don't know this to be true, but it sure doesn't appear we need to borrow money to build stuff that doesn't get used and gets waited, for years. And so it's really smart business plan all the way from starting with one drain cover and just adding equipment that fits with what we do. And that's why heaters probably is not in our wheelhouse. And don't hold your breath on an AquaStar heater. Everything else?
Well, while you're saving so much money on the efficiency of the equipment pad and how you've done it, sometimes I live in a cold area, and so the heater is on a lot. So, you can bump it up a little bit more because you're saving so much on the equipment pad. I think that's important to note. So,
What
yeah.
interesting is a real quick side. Like I mentioned the in pool circulation, but that's actually part of the three-legged stool. The in pool circulation is one of those. Never aim returns at skimmers. There's actually pool codes that have taught, oh, we want the nozzle to blow across the pool to push the leaves there. Well, the problem is a nozzle moves 20 gallons a minute. The skimmer moves 40 gallons a minute, but by the time that water crosses the pool, it's moving hundreds of gallons a minute and the leaves duck away from the skimmer. So it's counterproductive. Do not aim returns at skimmers. It also creates a short circuit. We send clean water right back to the filter. So really the simplest thing is, instead of turning a pool in a circle, is aim the returns down and make the water tumble like a clothes dryer. So instead of the swirl that we see where the junk goes down a sink drain in the center of the circle, well, what happens when we make a pool go in a circle, it moves all the stuff to the center. The pump turns off for eight hours, and there's where all the yuck is looking at. If we tumble it, it keeps it up in the water, and it has a much better chance of getting out. So, and then by aiming down, to your point, is now we're sending the heated water to the bottom of the pool, so we don't lose it as fast. If you're running a pool heater and you can see any movement on the surface of your pool, you're just sending the heat money into the air. So if you have a heater running and you see a jet, or not a spa jet, but a pool return that's rippling the water, you need to go turn it down. Aim it down so it doesn't disturb the surface of the water.
Great to know. Steve, this has been so educational and so amazing. So if a contractor is listening today, where can they find out more information about AquaStar and all of its products?
So first stop for sure is AquastarPoolProducts.com. AquaStar Pool Products, products is plural.com. That will take you to a great resource. I think it's very engineering relative to finding the details. I absolutely love it. It's not a lot of fluff. I mean, it's got awesome stuff, but it's a very tool-rich website. We've also got you can access it there, an online catalog. Our catalog is quite thick. We've come a long way from a drain cover. I'm holding up a catalog that's like a half-inch thick now. And that's available online. We have a digital version of that. Also, you can get resources relative to, we really pride ourselves on supporting the industry, including our competitors on the VGB Act stuff. I've been involved in the drain cover standard since 2002, been chairman of it since 2014, and so really know this inside and out. We have a great support team on drain covers. Then there's a technical field team, and if you really get into crazy stuff, then I'm available to help. So we're a great resource there, and we have a sales team and a technical support team that is just amazing and growing. It's gone from 5 to, I don't know, like 20 in the last 2 years. Thank you, pool industry, for supporting AquaStar. We are reinvesting in our processes to continue to support you.
That's great to know. And you can also find AquaStar. Their directory is on OutdoorCoffeeShop.com, and they have great videos, and you can get right back to their website and look up all their great things that they have. But we have some great videos and playlists for you for AquaStar. And while you're on OutdoorCoffeeShop.com, you should really sign up for the e-news, because it's right there for you, and it gives you a lot of information. You can hear more about a lot of our clients and the products that we support, and AquaStar's there too. So I want to thank Steve. Thank you so much for your time today. This was such a great knowledge session for people, and we're really excited to be able to get that out to our guests and the people that are interested in equipment pads and everything pool related. So thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Now you know why my nickname, actually my Instagram handle is Pool Geek Guide. Heavy on the geek. I'm not
Just
very
getting up
active
and
on it,
running
but you can
yet.
see some wacky stuff that
All
we
right,
have
you guys.
fun at AquaStar.
Yeah, check it out, everybody. So again, thank you for joining us today. And until next time, enjoy your day, and we'll bring more to you from the ground up. Thanks again.